The viewpoints expressed on Night Fright are not necessarily those of the host, the staff, the sponsors, or the affiliate stations. Tonight's program may contain graphic themes or images. Viewer discretion is advised.
There is a time for question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for horror and conspiracy. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Showtime! Welcome to the show. I'm Brent Holland. Welcome one and all to Night Fright. Get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of your choice going, and we're having a great show tonight. You know, there's a storm coming in. It looks like we're going to get some rain, and it's a good night to settle in, kick back in your most comfy chair. We're going to be looking at a new book called Never Argue with a Dead Person. And it's true and unbelievable stories from the other side. Our guest tonight is Thomas John. He's a Manhattan medium. Thomas, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let's jump in right away, shall we? Now, what inspired you to write a book that Never Argue with a Dead Person? Sounds like an odd little title for a book. I'm trying to think what a dead person on the other side and me on this side could have something to argue over.
Well, I wrote the story. I wrote the book. It's a collection of stories from my work as a psychic medium, and so I put together stories that I thought were fascinating, interesting, have universal messages from people on the other side. And the meaning of the title really is that a lot of people, when they hear about people who have passed away coming through, you know, they might be fearful, or they may question that, or they may not believe in it. And so the premise of it was to, you know, don't argue with it, don't fight it, don't, you know, just kind of embrace it for what it is. And that's kind of where the title comes from.
What kind of things come in, and how can you recognize them?
When I'm connecting with people that have passed over, like what types of stuff comes up?
Right.
Well, all sorts of things. You know, a lot of times the messages are about validation, appreciation. It might be the person on the other side wanting to share something that they didn't get to say before they passed. It may be something about, you know, something that they're learning on the other side, or something that they've gained some knowledge in on the other side that they didn't know about when they were in the physical. So the messages really vary from you know, they vary from person to person. It depends on, you know, what is being asked and what the connection is like for each person.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, for example, in the book, you know, there's a story about a man, for example, who comes to talk about his mother, and she died under unusual circumstances. She was actually living with his sister, and the sister was kind of, you know, bipolar and a little bit crazy, and she ended up unintentionally killing the mother. I mean, she pushed the mother in a fit of rage, and the mother was elderly, and she ended up crossing over, and so the brother was left and had a lot of guilt here. So you know, that would be one example. There's also a story in there about a little boy who connects with his mother. He had passed away under some unusual circumstances, and she had some questions about that, and so he made a connection with her, and there's a lot of stories too that also some of which haven't in the book. I've had celebrities come from the other side and reach out to their loved ones, and so there's a lot of there's a lot of different ways they communicate, and lot of the messages can be, very different from time to time.
Thomas, when you say that celebrities come to you, do you reach out to them and set, like, do you have to be in a certain frame of mind to clear your mind to allow them to come through to you? How does that process work for you?
People that are well-known celebrities, they are like everybody else who's a spirit. So one of the things is spirits are very connected to certain places. So if there's places that they lived or places that they have been before or places that were significant to them, they'll feel connected there, and that might be a good place to connect with them. A lot of times too, I've read for people who had a personal connection with the celebrity. So I've read people that are in the royal family that have wanted to connect with Princess Diana. I've read people who are writing an autobiography of a certain celebrity and want to fill in the blanks on a certain part of the story. So there either has to be sort of either a personal connection, or there has to be at least a personal connection to the place that they are, or something like that.
Can you give us some examples? Some of the celebs?
Well, John F. Kennedy, JFK, and Jackie Kennedy. I've done channeling sessions with both of them multiple times.
What did they have to say? What did they have to say?
Well, some of it is I'm actually working on a second book about celebrities on the other side, so that'll be part of my second book. One of the things that I was fascinated to know that I was told by the spirit of Jackie Kennedy was that she knew about things that were going on with JFK's assassination, and that she knew that she had a level of involvement in it. And so I thought that was fascinating. And I've had other celebrities come through, Anna Nicole, Whitney Houston. So I have had different celebrities for different circumstances come through. Either somebody had a personal connection, or for working on a project related to them. If they know that there's a connection point for them, they will, they'll choose to utilize that and step forward. Mm-hmm.
What can you describe a process? Somebody comes to you and they ask you to reach out to a loved one. Does it ever work in reverse, where somebody comes to you from the other side and then you have to find the loved one?
Yes. I mean, I would say that, yes. I mean, there's definitely an example of that in the book with the little boy that comes through, because he was actually bothering me throughout the week and through leading up to me being in a store. And he ended up, he kept trying to come through and different readings and different people's experiences. He was almost like interrupting. And finally it was that I figured out who he went to. And so that was pretty cool. I didn't know who he went to. And then finally he made a connection that it was his mom in the store. So it was actually him reaching out, me, not the other way around. So I would say that's one example, but sometimes they do interrupt or try to connect, and they can be a little bit disruptive. That definitely happens from time to time.
Can you give us a little bit of the example of what the child said to you?
Well, in that story, the mother was going through a lot of drama. She was having a lot of personal issues. She was actually getting through a divorce, and she had another kid that she didn't know if her son knew about that or not, and who had passed away, her young son. So she wanted to connect with him and ask him if he, did he know about that? Did he know that she had gone and have another child after he had passed away? So that was pretty meaningful for her. And basically it was just a very touching moment for her. It was a very touching experience for her. And it really changed her life in a way, because she didn't really believe in the afterlife. So to have her son come through and connect with him and connect with her, it meant a lot to her.
Does your voice change at all when you're channeling?
No, no, I don't do anything. Nothing changes with my voice. It's more, I receive information more clairvoyantly, clairaudiently, claircognizant. So I will see things, feel things, hear things. I will be told certain things. I will get images in my head. I will do some automatic writing and get some images, ideas that way. So, but nothing changes with my voice.
Okay. Could you describe to the audience what automatic writing is?
So automatic writing is a process where I take just a notebook or a piece of paper, and I meditate for a while. And when I feel like I'm in a certain calm vibrational state, I will start to write things. And usually it's in a place where it's not really conscious to me. So it's not like I'm journaling, because I don't really pay attention to what I'm actually writing. It just kind of is spontaneously coming to me. And as I'm writing stuff, I could write 2 or 3 or 4 pages and several pages. And then after I go back through it, there's certain things that make sense that I can sort of take from that. There might be sentences. Some of it might be kind of, but it's basically a non-conscious form of writing. And basically, there might be parts of it that are sort of don't make a lot of sense or aren't really clear, but then there'll be sentences or words that are really clear. And so I use that usually as a starting point before I do a reading for someone.
Do you ever use your opposite hand, your non-dominant hand, for when you're writing like that?
I have done that before. I have done that before, just because I do think it takes me a little bit out of the experience a little bit more. I have done that, and I would say normally as of late, I don't do that because I've gotten better about not controlling the information. But when I was first starting, I would do that a lot.
Okay. And you write that in one particular haunting story, with the help of a murder victim, you solved a case that had baffled the police. Can you tell us about that?
Well, that was a man. I normally don't do police work or murder cases or missing persons cases. I have done some, but I have a rule that I don't do that type of stuff unless there's a law enforcement agency that's actually involved. And the reason that I do that is because, sometimes obviously the family can be involved. And so I don't really want to, I don't want to take a side. So I normally will only work on a crime case if there's a law enforcement involved. And if there's a law enforcement people involved, and they ask me or invite me into the case, or if I feel I have information, I will present it to them, or if I get asked. And so this was an exception to the situation because it didn't really start off as a crime situation. A man had reached out to me and wanted me to connect with his wife. He wanted me to actually go to their home so I could really feel the energy of their home. And so he invited me to his home, and I went there. And it was really under the purposes of channeling her, though he had some suspicions that some of the ways in which she had passed were unusual. Some of the things just didn't really make sense to her, and so he was trying to decipher fact from fiction. And what ended up happening was, as I started to do the channeling, I discovered that even though it had been alleged that she had committed suicide, I discovered that she hadn't. I didn't think that she had committed suicide, or if she did, I thought it was under a tremendous amount of pressure from an outside source. And what we ended up uncovering was some journals that she had kept that her husband never knew about. She kept several journals about her relationship with some people in the community, and it turns out that her father had been a prominent political figure in the area and had been a very corrupt man, and had done a lot of damage, and then died. And she, in an effort to kind of save and preserve his memory, had done some covering up of things on her own, and some people were sort of utilizing that information to blackmail her and try to extort her for money. And she was trying to keep this all under wraps, even from her husband. And so she wasn't sharing anything with him either. And and it ended up that we had enough of bizarre evidence of something going on that we were able to actually go to the district attorney and the police station, and the police station, who then went to the district attorney to present that there had maybe been some people who should have some charges put against them for different extortion and conspiracy and stuff. So it was pretty fascinating. It was a fascinating thing to go through, and especially with him, getting some closure, because he knew that his wife just hadn't gone home one day and committed suicide. I mean, he knew that there was something more to it. So that was pretty helpful to him, just because it gave him so much personal closure.
The people that were involved in the murder, were they subsequently charged and incarcerated?
Well, unfortunately, there's, the legal system is not a perfect system in America, and so the information we got, we came very close to some charges being placed, very close, but nothing was ever fully prosecuted, and actually 2 of the people involved ended up passing away before anything could really be put against them. They had ended up dying of some natural cause or something. So no, but it gave him enough closure to move on with his life, to know the true answer. And it also it helped the law enforcement agency a lot too, because they were able to look into other things that these people might have done, and also to look into some of their ways of evaluating an event like this, because they sort of missed a couple of key things.
Okay. So you must have felt pretty good about that, being able to help out in that sense.
Well, I think that any time that there can be closure for someone, it's a nice feeling to be a part of that. Yeah.
Okay. Has there ever been anything that's come through that hasn't been so pleasant? You say never argue with a dead person. Has there been some grumpy spirits that have come through that are just looking for an argument?
I think on the other side, everybody has a different developmental stage over there. So everybody is a little bit different. Everybody, all the spirits are different personality-wise. And, some are more evolved than others. So there certainly have been spirits that were confusing, or the way they gave information or the way they said things was maybe a little bit harsh. I don't really work with negative spirits, so I've never had anything like that, luckily enough. But yeah, I mean, every spirit is different because every relationship is different. So it's always different, the way the information comes through, how they want to word it, et cetera, et cetera.
Have you ever put off telling people information?
I don't really put off telling people information because I really have a relationship with the spirit world where I tell them that if they have something to share with me, then they need to make sure before they share something with me that it's appropriate to tell this person that. So if they share some sort of health information or death information or something like that, I ask that the person be prepared to hear that. And if they're not, for whatever reason, then I don't want to be told about that. So by and large, the spirits respect those rules, and, they work with me within that framework.
When a person comes to you and their parent, their child, I guess it must be terrible when it's a child, what is the main purpose for coming to you? Is it to make a connection, to know that the person who has passed away is okay on the other side?
A lot of it is closure. Yeah, knowing that there is something on the other side, getting some answers. Sometimes people don't. They just don't have the right answers, and they need to have some closure on why something happened, or why a person decided to pass at a certain time, or why a person was a certain way in a certain time period in their life. So there's all sorts of different ways why somebody will come through. And but by and large, I would say, yeah, it's a lot of insight, and a lot of it is about closure. A lot of it is closure and getting some answers about what transpired in that person's life.
Do people want a sustained conversation? In other words, will they try and sustain a conversation through you with the other side 2 months, 3 months, a year? Is that possible?
So you mean, will they keep coming back to me like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have had spirits that sort of stay with me. That definitely has happened. I would say that it's not necessarily a common thing, but I have had spirits that they want to stick with me, and they feel like they form a relationship with me, and they just feel connected to me, and they want to keep that rapport going. I have had that happen before. Like I said, it's not really a common thing, but it does happen.
Mm. Is there a point in a situation like that where the spirit will say, okay, that's enough, now I have to move on? Something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely happens. I think that sometimes it's just to the point where they have said everything that they need to say. And spiritually, it doesn't make sense for them to continue to come through with sort of the same information and such. So that's a common thing. Sometimes it's just that it would almost be like they would be holding the person back in the physical if they kept doing that. So I do notice that sometimes, or I would even say pretty frequently, that spirits sort of, they say their piece, and they say what they what they needed to say, and they sort of they move on. Some spirits, they keep coming because they either they find that connection so meaningful, or it's helping their soul still. Every time they connect, it helps their soul and helps the other person. It helps the living person's soul and helps the person who's crossed over on the other side soul evolution as well too. So it's usually a positive thing, but anytime it gets to be almost like a codependent thing, they will sort of pull back on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Has this been a curse for you or a blessing?
I would say both. I wouldn't maybe say the word curse, but I know where you're going with that. I mean, sometimes it is challenging. I think that the big thing is there can be, there's so much grief that comes with it. And so sometimes it's hard to be around all that. And also sometimes it definitely can be a little bit disruptive to my life as well. And so sometimes it can be draining energetically. It can be very draining. But I would say by and large, since it helps so many people, I find it to be a blessing, and I find that people can really be helped by it. Sometimes I think it really puts people on a certain path, and it really awakens them. And so in that way, it certainly has been a blessing, and I'm able to give insight, either into my own life or to other people's lives, or people who matter to me. So all that is a positive, I think.
Have you been ostracized or cursed at by religious fanatics for your abilities?
Yeah, I mean, that happens quite frequently. And my answer to that is sort of twofold, which is, one is, I don't try to not like someone who tries to force skeptics to believe it, or people. I feel that it's one of those things that people come to the work when they are ready for it, and people come to the work when they feel ready for it, and when they're able to, when they're able to open their hearts to it, and that it's not for everybody. Maybe some people, some people just maybe don't understand it, or some people just don't feel connected to it. And that's okay. There's certain things and causes and things in the world that I may not feel connected to. So I do respect that. And occasionally people reach out with their opinions and stuff like that. Again, I don't think I'm not here to ever convince anyone. I just sort of do what I do, and I don't really think much more of it.
There's probably a lot of young kids listening right now. 2 questions. When did you become aware of your gift? And how would you coach younger people? Because I'm sure there was a lot of self-doubt perhaps for you in the beginning when you became aware of this and questioning that I'm different. Well, how would you coach the younger folks that are becoming aware of their abilities right now? And when did you become aware?
Well, I became aware of them when I was about 4 years old. I talk about it in the book that I actually started to see my grandfather, who had passed, and he started to visit me and started to give me messages, and this was my father's father, and he started to tell me things to then go tell my father, who was at first scared by it and then comforted by it, but that was something that was very real that happened to me. And one thing I would say is I do feel that it's getting better. I do feel that people are getting more receptive of it. I do think that people are getting more open towards it. I do think people are getting more, feeling more connected to it. I do think that people are being less judged for it. So all that is certainly a positive. I think that that's all a positive. One thing I would say is to surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with people who believe in this type of thing, who will support you, who are not there to judge you. And if you can do that, then you should be able to move forward in this quite a way. Find a mentor. And I also tell people, anybody who wants to develop their intuition or their gift, that you need to learn to meditate and you need to learn to pray, and those are very important parts of that. So yeah, I mean, I think that, and people can come into this gift at any age. It's one of those things that, some people come into it later in life. Some people come to it very early in life. Some people are born with it. Sometimes it happens because of a traumatic experience. There's all certain different ways that people step into this work.
Has there ever been any spirits that you certainly didn't want anything to do with? As an extension of that, are there demons out there that you should be cognizant of?
I personally don't do any work with demons, and I personally, when people say demons, maybe I'm just uneducated, but I don't really know what people mean by that. To me, I don't know what a demon is. I know people use that word. I know that it has certain connotations. I personally don't believe in demons because like I said, I don't understand how they function and what they consist of. I do believe that there are spirits that, for whatever reason, can sometimes wreak some havoc into our lives. I think there are spirits that get trapped on the earth and get confused and then can cause chaos. I certainly believe that. I think that's very true. I also think that stuff is more unlikely. I think it's not as likely as people think. A lot of people like to attribute a lot of meaning to that. And I don't necessarily believe that it's as frequent as people think. But I do think there are lower vibration, spirits that are out there, sure.
Have you ever walked into a place and just felt, because this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's quite common for most people, you just get a bad vibe. There's a 60s term. You just get a bad vibe from a place.
Right. As I said, I'm clear feeling and clairsentient. So a lot of times I will feel energy from people, places, or things. I will feel, I will feel the past of a place. I will feel the present of a place. I will feel if something's energetically, if something's kind of out of order. I can feel all that. So that's definitely happened to me that's happened to me many times.
Have any of the spirits that have been in contact with you ever mentioned a god-like figure? perhaps a Jesus, or perhaps a Buddha even, or something along that?
Yeah, a lot of times they define it more as a team. So I hear a lot about, ascended master teams. I hear a lot about teams of guides. I hear a lot about teams of, spirits that are there that come in a group to meet someone. Or what I hear about. Um, but I hear also more that the judgment of this type of stuff, somebody judging someone for their mistakes here on earth. I've been told a lot of times that comes from an internal place. That's more of a place. It's not from an external, God, so to speak, but it's more from an internal place of what we know to be true in our soul, that we then have to, evaluate if we did a good or a bad job here.
Do you fear death now, or has that changed at all?
I think that, I don't, I think with my work, I have a bit greater understanding of death. I feel like with everybody, there is still, no matter how much research is done, it's that one thing that nobody will know until they experience it. It's nothing that you can experience on the earth. So it's, in a sense, an undefinable experience. So in that way, I think that it's a little bit, sometimes it's a little bit daunting to think about. I don't find that I'm scared by death, though.
The JFK Assassination, the definitive book by Brent Holland. From inside the Oval Office to Daily Plaza, first-person witness accounts. Order yours right now. nightfrightshow.com.
You're doing a lot of good work to help a lot of people. How would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to reach through you to a loved one?
So I have a website. It's mediumthomas.com, and they would go on there and request an appointment. I have quite a longer waiting list, but they would go on and request for appointments. Very easy. I also have other ways to experience the work too. So I have a live stream series, video series where I do some readings, a lot of radio shows that I'll do. So there's other things I do to sort of keep opportunities open for people, but that would be the main way.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, in your book, this latest book, Not to Argue with the Dead, where did that title come from? Not to Argue with a Dead Person.
It came from one of the stories, because it was a story where someone was trying to prove the dead person wrong, and the dead person turned to be right. And so somebody in the story said, never, I guess you should never argue with a dead person. And it sort of evolved from there. And then I just kind of made it as a thematic part of the I just kind of thought it was thematic of all the stories, because in a lot of stories, it's the dead people kind of coming in, sort of surprising the person, but being accurate and right and helpful in their message.
How do you discern what is a real? Have you ever been tricked, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Has a spirit ever tried to trick you? And if so, how do you discern now what's real and what's not real in terms of a message?
I don't think a spirit has ever really tried to trick me. I think more what happens is, when I was first doing this work, I would get very overwhelmed by it, and I would sometimes maybe let that anxiety get the better part of me, and it would sort of cloud the reading. But I've never really been. I don't think I've ever been tricked by a spirit. I also work with my own spirit guides to sort of help me make a bridge to bridge the connection. And by doing that, I really am able to, use a language and use guides and use spirit guides that are very familiar to me. So I sort of know their language and their system for, interacting. Okay.
The spirit guides, are they passed on loved ones for you, or are they their own entities?
It's a combination of both. I have worked with my grandmother, who passed away, my mother's mother. She's worked with me many times. By and large, though, my spirit guides are not people that I knew in the physical. There are more people that help me from the other side that have sort of been assigned to me. But I have had, and then, sometimes I'll have for a while and then we'll kind of leave. I've had a relative that has died that has, I wasn't even that close to, but they'll come for a while, stay with me, do some guide work with me, and then leave. So the sort of the team is always a little bit evolving.
Okay. Now, you'd mentioned your grandmother. Did you have a strong relationship with her when she was
Yeah,
alive? Was there a
we were
bonding
very
there?
close. Yeah, we were very close. Spent a lot of time together, and she and I were very connected. And she was probably one of the first people um, that really recognized that I had a gift and recognized that I had some sort of ability or some sort of way of communicating, or some sort of way of tapping into this other side. So she was probably the first person that indirectly kind of recognized that. I mean, she didn't really use those types of jargon terms, but she definitely, she knew that I had a special, gift and a way to connect to the other side.
I'd like to return to the Jackie Kennedy thing, if you don't mind, and JFK, because I've written a book on the Kennedy assassination, and Ted Sorensen, who was JFK's speechwriter, was a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if, in your speaking with Jackie Kennedy, what that entailed and what she told you.
Yeah, I did several, channeling sessions with her, and I did them using automatic writing, and I used several of her objects. I used objects of hers that belonged to her that I was able to access, and I also went to places that were significant to her. And I think I made a good connection several times. One thing that I was noticed about her that I found to be interesting, I'd have to really go through my notes because it's been a little bit since I did the channeling session, but I remember that she was very talkative about how she did not always think that she was a good person here. That she thought that she was kind of put in this certain light of being a person of Camelot and this sort of royalty almost, and that she felt that she had a lot of flaws. I remember her also talking about things with her husband and saying that. There were, she made it seem like there were several people involved, that it was sort of a coordinated effort. It wasn't just one person who set out to do things. I remember her specifically bringing up a strong connection with the CIA, and I remember her talking about that, and I remember her. Saying that was a level of that was a level of involvement, and I also remember that they were involved in some way, and I also remember her talking a lot about her personal relationship with JFK. And saying that with a lot of the infidelity stuff that's been written about, that she did know a lot about that, and that she had a personal infidelity as well. But I thought that was the most striking thing, is that she was almost, I felt her spirit was almost resistant to this sort of image that was portrayed of her, and she was sort of there to tell me, look, I had some problems too. I wasn't a great person. I wasn't easy to get along with. And she talked a lot about kind of like her choice in men and some of her decisions to be in different relationships, and how she had the spirit, both physical and non, when he crossed over to JFK, but that they were never really in love, that they were more almost like friends, but it was a powerful dynamic. But yeah, it was a pretty fast also remember too when I did a channeling with someone who actually was very close to a close male friend of John F. Kennedy Jr. And he came through with information that he had basically told me that he had accessed on the other side, and basically said that he still felt that his death, his plane crash, was a conspiracy, and that he was targeted to cross, to be killed. So I thought that both of those things were very fascinating.
Wow, you may be onto something there. There's a lot of
You must
talking.
you must take a personal interest in JFK, if your friend and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. And I think you're absolutely correct. The CIA was front and center, especially
Mhm.
around the assassination, without question. Did she talk about Carolyn at all?
About did she
Did
come up
Jack?
at all?
Yeah, did Caroline come up at all?
I don't. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember a lot about her, actually. Kind of a surprisingly not a lot about the kids. I don't remember getting a lot about her. It was more about her relationship, with more with her relationship with JFK, and also I made connection points too with JFK about Maryland, and asked him sort of, what was the story there. And the way he basically explained it to me, which I've come to believe just based on sort of personal research, I feel like is true. His spirit told me that, she wasn't killed, she wasn't necessarily, assaulted or but basically things were done to sort of push her over the edge, to make her kind of do this herself and not be prevented from ending her life, and that things were then done afterwards to kind of cover it up and get it so that it looked like it, but basically it was sort of enticed into taking her own life.
Did he have any regrets that he gave you?
They sort of all did. I remember it sort of being a dark, really dark energy channeling, and very intensive. And they talked also about some of the past life stuff, and they talked about how, and it was interesting. I actually, when I did these channelings, it was like I said, probably a couple of years ago, but they actually told me that they had past lives in certain places, and one of the big things that came out is that they said that they had a past life they, through their Akashic records and stuff, they said that they had a past life in some of the early parts of Russia, and way back in the day. So it was interesting because I then went and kind of looked at they were part of European royalty, and so they actually told me some of the people that they were in past lives. And it was interesting because when I went back and looked at some of them, they looked actually like some of those people.
Huh.
So it was that I thought that was actually kind of fascinating as well.
Have you ever done that for yourself? Trying to figure out who you were in a previous life?
It's not really a focus of mine, but I have done it sometimes. And I have, I have done it. And it's not an expertise. I mean, it's hard to do a lot of this stuff, for yourself, because a lot of times it's hard. It's hard to do it for yourself because you're always biased. But yeah, it was cool that once I started to research things, that I kind of felt like I was onto something. I mean, even with the even for example with the JFK stuff, JFK basically told me, his spirit came forward and told me that the CIA had a connection to Lee Harvey Oswald, way before he was assassinated, and that they were sort of there was a relationship there, and that a lot of Lee Harvey Oswald's connection to the CIA was eliminated and taken away and kind of push down. And also, I remember how much JFK talked about how the media played a big role in getting this to sway a certain way by sort of, that the CIA and the government sort of planted a lot of stuff within the media and shut down things very strongly, got rid of things that would look, bad or look, somehow incriminating.
I think you're onto something there once again, because that's certainly, in my own research, is how it played out, without question at all. Now, when you're dealing with spirit, is there an honesty or a love that comes through? Is it more of a feeling sometimes that comes through you for the person that on this side that they're trying to give a message to?
Yeah, I mean, usually when they come through, they're very positive. They usually don't come through in a way that is, negative or trying to control or trying to punish or things like that. They usually come in through in a way that, is loving and heart-centered and very peaceful, actually. So that's usually how they come through. Very calming. Sometimes, like I said, if they're not evolved in a certain way, it might be hard for them to get there. So it might take them a little bit before they can really be in that loving light place. But usually, and unless they lived really, really horrible lives where they were, murderers or something like that, they're usually able to, get where they need to be and get into a peaceful place where they can then communicate in a way that's not based in anger or rage, but is really based in love and light.
In your book, Never Argue with a Dead Person, by the way, folks, you can get it at www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book covers. There'll be several of them there, and that'll take you right to a spot where you can order them from the comfort of your own home. In the book, Never Argue with a Dead Person, was there one story that stood out from the rest?
Yeah, I would say probably, all of them are where I tried to really put really fascinating ones in there. So I tried not to put in any that were, boring or not really that, that interesting. One that I had in there that was, I thought was particularly compelling was actually one where I was at a cocktail party, not planning on doing any readings, just kind of visiting with friends, and I made a friend there, a woman and her husband, and we sort of started talking about what we did. And the man, you could tell, was very much a skeptic, very closed-minded, didn't believe in any of this and stuff. And so it was fascinating to me when his mom started to come through, and she started to communicate to him and tell him things about his journey and where he was at in life and things he was going through. And he really shifted his whole mindset. I don't think he was preparing to do that at all. I don't think he would be doing that. And he really opened up his mind. And so that was something that was really powerful. So I would say that's probably my favorite, just because it shows that, as I said before, every work in different ways, and everybody can come to this work sort of, when they're ready to.
Mm-hmm. What is the main goal you feel that the spirits, when they contact you? I can understand when somebody loses a loved one on this side and they come to you. But when a spirit contacts you, it seems, I don't know, a kind of a juxtaposition, like it shouldn't really happen. Are there regrets that spirits have that they want to perhaps tell somebody on this side?
Oh yeah, I mean that happens all the time, because again, it's a two-way communication.
Okay.
And really on the other side, they have to do some work too. It's like not like every version that I understand is, people just don't go to the other side and just, sit in lawn chairs and have, drinks with umbrellas. I mean, they have to work on themselves, and they have to really evolve and make some decisions karmically about mistakes they made. Because when we come here, we have a map. We have our main hit points. Okay, we're, main things. But then there's other things that we have free will that then kind of alter our path. And so it's important that we really, atone for. One way we can do that is by coming through and apologizing and saying, I'm sorry I did this. I didn't realize I did that. I didn't realize that was so hurtful to you. Because when we go to the other side, we really do have a full life review, and we really learn about things that even small things that we might not realize their implication. We realize the significance of something that we went. We realize we realize the impact we have on other people. So that's when we come through and sort of say to someone, hey, I was cruel. That can really help that person, and it's healing, and it's all about, forgiveness. So it's a real positive.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, you're doing great work, my friend. Much appreciate you coming on the show tonight. The book is called Never Argue with a Dead Person. Never Argue with a Dead Person. True and unbelievable stories from the other side. Thomas John is a Manhattan medium, has been on the show tonight. He's been our guest. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can get his books. And also, of course, my good friend Kelly Logue. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, who maintains the website. He's up in Juneau, Alaska. We'll be putting all the links to Thomas's website as well on our website, www.nightfrightshow.com. Thank you so much, Thomas, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. See you all next time.
You're listening to Night Fright and your host, Brent Holland. The time is now. Your voice on the web for paranormal and conspiracy.
The JFK Assassination, the definitive book by Brent Holland. From inside the Oval Office to Daily Plaza, first-person witness accounts. Order yours right now. NightFrightShow.com.